All right, we're back. The STLHD Nation podcast. I like saying it in the radio voice.
Yeah.
Did radio. I did a little bit of radio.
Casey Kasem.
Portland State University radio station. I had my own radio show for a while. It was fun. I had live bands come in. Actually played like vinyl records on the air.
Yeah, you were scratching?
Forth. No, but I would go back and forth and do the only time I would play digital music is if I had like some weird song that somebody only released online or something, or I couldn't get hold of it. But other than that, it was all vinyl. So anyway, let's talk spring fishing.
Yes, that's my favorite time.
I think it's everybody's favorite time because you're crawling out of the cave of darkness. Yesterday, though, was like almost 60 degrees.
Yesterday was rad.
Sunny. It was a beautiful day. And I had some trees removed in my backyard, and my backyard is demolished. The guys showed up later in the afternoon, like about 3. There was one tree they didn't pull out, and they got it out of there. And I just hung out in the yard the rest of the day after that, and like watched them cut down the tree. And then this is tall. It was like 50-foot, huge tree, in between a fence and a shed, and they just thread the needle. It was pretty cool to see. But yeah, it was a beautiful day. This weekend's not supposed to be so bad. It's Super Bowl Sunday this weekend. I don't know if you can say that without being, you're supposed to say the big game. The big game is this weekend.
Are you?
I don't think you could.
If you say the S word?
Yeah, I think so. You might have to delete that. I don't know.
Me neither. I don't know.
Yeah, YouTube might nab us for that one. The big game is Sunday, and if you don't watch the big game, then go fishing, because there's going to be a lot of people who aren't on the river because they're watching the big game.
It was always one of my favorite days to be a guide.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was always empty.
Yeah.
It's like...
Makes sense.
People do.
Yeah. So what is your favorite spring fishery?
My favorite spring fishery is spring steelhead on the coast. I love that everybody leaves to go springer fish.
Yeah.
At least a lot of them do, especially on good springer years.
Yeah.
So if there's a good springer run and they start catching them early, the coast kind of turns into a ghost town. Mm-hmm. I love being on those like sunny coastal days when it's like 60 degrees and the willows are kind of breaking bud and the water's like kind of getting in that like beautiful spring.
Yeah, you're not completely freezing your ass off. Just in the morning.
The days are perfect and everything's just clean and smells good.
Didn't we get...
Except on how far down you are on the river.
How close you are to Tillamook?
Yeah.
The mornings can be super duper cold, and then afternoons, when you get out of the shady spots, can be really nice. You know. Yeah. There's but didn't we have a snowstorm in April last year or something, like a little flurry?
I don't know.
Something like that.
Together. But I will tell you, it's my favorite fishery. I love it. There's big fish around. There's usually lots of fish around. Mm-hmm. The water warms up. The fish are grabby and bitey, and you can catch quite a few. And it usually eases up a little if it's a good springer season, and it's like the nicest time to be on the coast. Usually it's not torrentially raining sideways. Just always a bonus there.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the best spring fishing day that you can remember on the coast?
As far as what?
Steelhead.
As far as like numbers of fish?
Just the best day. Doesn't matter.
I don't know. I have lots of great days over there. It's just my favorite time. Like, you know how you get to your happy place? It's like standing on the side of a river. Yeah. The willows breaking bud. Yeah. The sun is shining on you. It's not crowded. That's my happy place. Every one of those is the best time.
I thought, the reason I asked that is because usually if you can pick a time, it's because there was like that one day that was like ridiculously great.
I've had lots of ridiculously great days at that time of year.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be a guide when things were more often ridiculously great, I think. So.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Early early 2000s was a great time to guide the coast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I enjoy that time of year for steelhead fishing as well, for all the same reasons. But I also enjoy some spring Chinook fishing. Early bass fishing, that's sacrilege, I know. But
I love me the bass fishing.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun. We're going to go down to Northern California.
Yeah.
And fish Lake Oroville. That's end of March.
Yeah, right before we go to the OP and fish with Mikey.
That's right.
So we have like 2 weeks there where we go
it's
to
gonna be
California.
long for 2 weeks.
Yep, we go to California and fish Oroville with Chuck. And then we turn around and like 4 days later we leave and go to the OP and fish with Mikey.
I hope we have the same kind of day we had last time we did that with Chuck. That's so fun. Bass fishing in Northern California in early spring, if you know where to go and what you're doing, which I'm not really going to discuss too much on this podcast right now. We'll talk about it when we get back. But if you know where you're going and what you're doing, it is so fun. And I think we had the clicker going, I think it was 41 fish in like a 6-hour period or something like that. And every one of them was feisty. It was just great. It was a fantastic day. Cold, super cold in the morning, but it warmed up in the afternoon. We were in t-shirts. It was great.
Yeah, I feel the same about our trip to Forks. I hope it's as good as it was last time we were there.
Oh man, that was good.
That was absolutely phenomenal. I think there's something to be said for, and this is having been a guide and knowing lots of guides, there's just no replacement for the fact that you're on the river every day.
Oh,
how many
100%.
How many times with Mikey did he tell you, like, oh, you're gonna drift it right there, and then right behind that third rock, it's gonna sink. And
that guy's
gonna
a wizard.
Be a fish.
That guy's a wizard.
He is the biggest fish nerd I know.
Yeah.
Which makes him one of the greatest guides I've ever met.
Yeah.
And he's one of my favorite dudes.
Yeah, he's a hell of a dude. Great photographer too.
He is a very skilled photographer. I'm curious we're going to take AJ with us this time. It's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
be real interesting.
Yeah.
I'm super
I
excited.
wish we would have had a film guy on that trip.
Oh, dude.
I mean, damn. That would have been awesome.
Well, you have one now.
Should I bring the scotch this time?
No. No. That was the worst. That bottle's still sitting in my bar.
It's terrible.
And every time somebody comes to my house, I'm like, hey, dude, you want to taste the worst?
Ugh.
The worst scotch ever.
That is the peatiest scotch I've ever tasted in my life.
It's like,
what brand was it?
it's Lagavulin.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
Ron Swanson's scotch.
I love Ron Swanson, but god dang.
I do want to try his Lagavulin that's in the Nick Offerman
The Nick
ones.
Offerman edition.
Yeah, just to try it. It's aged in the Guinness barrels.
Yeah.
I don't know if that does anything. Makes it less
Can't make it worse.
poopy. Oh my! Nothing could make it worse. You could somehow infuse the smell that you get when you have an ant infestation in your house into that bottle, and it still wouldn't taste worse.
I think my best description.
You know
of
that weird smell of
yeah.
ants?
Yes. My best description of that bottle is it literally tastes like somebody scrubbed an ashtray with kerosene and then you drink it. It's the smell of old campfire that's been rained on for 3 days.
It's like somebody scrubbed an ass with kerosene and then you drank it. It was so bad.
You know what it is
I was cold though when I drank it.
Yeah, and we did drink some of it. It was worth it.
Yep.
That being said, we will bring something better this time. It's funny to me. I think it's just either love it or you hate it.
Yeah. Well, I like some. I've had some scotches that I liked a lot.
Me too, but not that one.
What's it? Speyburn?
Yeah.
You've seen that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not the most expensive.
I think most the Scotch kind of breaks. I'm going to talk out my ass here because I'm more of a bourbon and a rye guy than I'm a Scotch guy.
Yeah.
But I think really kind of breaks down into the Speyside, less peaty, and
the more peaty it gets, the less I like it.
And that's kind of my jam too. I can drink me some Glenfiddich.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
You know, if you get a super peaty Scotch and you mix some water, like distilled water in it, it's way better. Way better. I think that's how they drink it.
Swigging it from the bottle's rough.
No. That's how they drink it over there, though, is they put, like, fancy water in it, and they won't even, like, I was watching, what is it, Rick Steves was in...
Good old Rick Steves.
Tricky Ricky. I love Rick Steves. He was in Scotland or something. Ireland.
I mean, Scotland would make sense for Scotch.
Right? Shows you what I know. And the guy was talking to him about, like, we don't even drink it unless we put this water in it. And if you're a Scotch nerd and you're listening to this conversation and cringing, I don't blame you. But if you're watching this or listening and you have the option of putting in a comment, we'd be interested to know your favorite spring fishing opportunity, because there's a ton of them out there. Striped bass.
I think that's what makes spring so good.
Yeah.
Spring is the first time of the year when you have options. Mm-hmm. Lots of options. It's the time of the year when when you wake up and you go, oh, I want to fish for today.
Yeah.
I go springer fishing.
You can bounce around.
I go steelhead fishing. I go bass fishing. I can go wherever you want. Do whatever you want. There's options. Trout fishing's starting to open in a lot of places. Mm-hmm. It's the options time of year. Mm-hmm. It's when you live you live in a place that has lots of things.
We have quite a few options over here.
Yeah.
I sometimes I'd be interested to know from you, like Great Lakes Midwest folks, what your spring options are. Leave a comment.
Yeah, we have some good sturgeon fishing this spring.
Yeah. Yep. You used to do those big giant sturgeon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
I've never done that. I've only done the, Willamette shakers.
Yeah, you used to be able, like a long time ago, before the stretch below, like where the fisheries is now was closed.
Yeah.
Because now it's closed early.
Yeah.
Before there was the stretches by the falls were closed and all that. We used to do a lot of that.
Yeah. The big giant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really fun, man. Go out and get sore arms and go out. Usually a little later in the spring, early summer, you go out and shad fish first, catch a bunch of bait, and then go out and fish fresh shad for them.
There's another one, shad.
Yeah. It was fun, man. Again, options. That's the time of the year with options. Do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's more walleyes, or I don't really fish for walleyes.
Yeah, no. But man, when the Willamette starts warming up, and the smallmouth fishing on the Willamette, you just want to go rip and just have a blast. Super fun.
Dude, John Day.
Kokanee.
Oh, Kokanee are going.
Ooh, I'm taking my kids. Kokanee with kids is fun. If you get into a spot that has a good amount of fish and it's just wham, 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 wham. Yeah, that's fun.
I've had to, jigging for them is really fun.
You told me that. I've tried that. No success.
I've been
not surprisingly.
I've been a couple of times when you see them on the depth finder and they're just a big ball of fish.
Yeah.
And kind of just sit over them and jig vertical jigs and catch a bunch.
Yeah.
Really fun. Options.
Yeah. Yeah, kokanee are delicious.
And they are good.
Sorry if you're calling us right now and we didn't answer the phone.
Sorry that AJ didn't.
Yeah, there's two phones, AJ. The kokanee gig is fun. I want to do. I really only fish the family lake house spot for kokanee, but I've always wanted to do the Washington side. I'm hesitant to name spots on the podcast because I don't want to do that, but there's a place in Washington, if you have a brain you can figure it out, where lots of people go, and it looks really fun. I've never done it.
I would like to all my kokanee fishing has been like me fumbling around catching kokanee.
Yeah,
I think it would be fun to fish kokanee with somebody who really knows how to catch kokanee.
Yeah,
I think
we should do that. Make a note, AJ, for always searching. Let's do that. Cameron Black he does that really well.
And I know VIP Pro has got some guys that are kind of with him.
Does Pro do it? Pro doesn't do it.
No, but I think some of his guides really know their kokanee.
That'd be fun to book with Cameron.
Be fun to do a good kokanee trip.
Yeah.
Plus, they're delicious. Mm-hmm. They are delicious little fish.
They are. Smoked, they're good too.
Yes, they are.
That'd be fun to round up all the kids and go do that.
Yeah, do a kid trip.
Yeah.
Kokanee. A Kokanee kid trip.
You have a good day striper fishing with kids is fun too.
Yes. Any day fishing with your kids is fun.
Yeah, but like having a fish that pulls and fights pretty hard like that for a little kid is just a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why my kids like bass fishing.
Yeah.
I catch a bunch of them. They pull pretty hard. It's active because they're really
If you got kids and you take your kid like steelhead or salmon fishing, that's a tough one. Unless you just happen upon an amazing day. Like, I'm talking little kids.
Yeah, I think it's building blocks, right?
Sure.
Like you take your kid bluegill fishing, then
you got to take them.
Then you take them kokanee fishing.
You got to take them on something that hits fast.
You know,
attention spans.
Like by the time my youngest son Liam was 9, I took him to a trip to the OP and we fished for steelhead with Mikey.
He could hang.
And he could hang because he fished since he was 5. And he like kind of gotten to where he liked the fishing part as much as the catching part. And then he caught a couple steelhead and he was super stoked.
Especially little kids now where everything's so instantaneous. Like my kids, my daughter, my oldest is 7. She's getting there. My youngest is 4. And everything is so instantaneous. They got to have it right now. So when you take them on anything that requires any kind of patience, it's hard. You know, they like to sit on the dock at the lake and bluegill fish, catch, a bunch of bluegill, but that's just wham, 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 one after another. If they get out there and it's like early morning and they're not hitting, they will throw the rod down in frustration. Yeah. I've been out here for 15 seconds and haven't caught 10 fish, and you have to talk to them and explain to them. But the older they get, the easier it gets. But yeah, you got to take them on something that hits pretty quick.
I think you can. There are those times, those trips that make your kids love fishing. Like for me, I used to do every year. I used to take my raft and a couple kayaks, and I would float like a 5-day float on the John Day. Mm-hmm. We would always do it in like middle of July. It's hot. Yeah, they swim. Yeah, every single time they throw anything in the water, they catch a bass. Yeah, they catch a bunch of catfish. They catch some big fish. They get it's just like every sandbar they want to get out and swim. It's just a fun trip. And then when you come back from that trip, then your kids are like, I want to go fishing again. Yeah. I want to go fishing again.
What's the first fishing trip you took as a kid that like got you hooked?
When I was a kid,
pun intended.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I grew up in California when I was small. I moved here in like the 3rd grade. So I was pre-3rd grader. Yeah. And I always loved to fish, but we had a family friend who knew some people who owned a dairy, and his name was Dave, and the
Dairy Dave.
Yeah, Dairy Dave. Yeah. Anyway, he used to take us. This lady owned this dairy. Her name was Marcia. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, we always called it Marcia Pond. And there was a pond on this dairy that had, it was maybe 5 acres, pretty good sized pond, but it had gigantic largemouth in it. Mm. And so even as a kid, you could throw like a little spinnerbait or a beetle spin or whatever, and you catch these like 4, 5, 6 pound largemouth. Mm-hmm. That was what made me love to fish. You go out there in the summer, and it wasn't like in a gross part of the dairy. It was on these rolling hills in like kind of Central California. Mm-hmm. Green rolling hills. You drive out there to this pond and park next to the pond and catch these big giant bass, and I loved it. And that was like, after that, I was hooked, man.
Oh yeah.
What about you?
I would say when my dad's dad was still alive, we were real young. I don't remember all the details of the day because I was really young, but I just remember catching a ridiculous amount of bluegill and then coming back to the house. I think they were in a bucket. I think we threw them in a bucket. And
bluegill fishing.
Yeah. And then my mom and my grandma cooked them up, fried them up, and we ate a bunch of bluegill. And with Grandpa, because I only got to see my grandpa like once every 2 years. Like they lived in San Diego and we lived north of Sacramento, and so we didn't have, they were old, they were way old. My grandpa, I think he died in 89, I think. So I was 9 and he was 87.
He's an old man.
Yeah, he was old. They didn't leave by the time I came around. So we barely got to see him unless we went down there. And he came up. We were living in the foothills up there, kind of gold country area. And we went bluegill fishing somewhere. I don't remember where. And I just remember he was the one who really got me into fishing. My dad took us, we would always go to like Inglebright, Grass Valley, Little Grass Valley, and Collins Lake and trout fish. Just, salmon eggs and on a bobber, my dad had a little 8-foot flat bottom Valco that he towed behind his Corvette. He had it all rigged to where it sat on top of a box trailer and the outboard sat in the trailer. He thought it was the slickest thing ever because he could go drive his T-top 78 Corvette up to the lake, rocking Steve Winwood or something as loud as it would come out the window, and then back that thing down the boat ramp, and everybody'd be like, what the hell? And he'd pull the boat off. It had a bar across the back. It was on a hinge, and all the stuff was in the box trailer. And he'd unload everything into the boat, put the little trolling motor on the back, and, park the Corvette and next to all the pickup trucks and stuff. And then we'd get in that thing and just sit out there and catch limited trout, come back. It was fun as hell when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I didn't realize how nerdy that was. But
that's fun stuff, man.
It was fun. But Grandpa was the one who my dad took me and like honed the love of fishing, but Grandpa was the one who got me hooked. Because, we respected my grandpa a lot, even though we didn't see him, war vet, all that stuff, and just a cool guy. And when you have somebody that you look up to like that and you don't get to see them very often, and then you go out and they show you something, it's your grandpa shows you something, it like sticks with you. And for whatever reason, that's what's stuck with me.
Yeah, probably means a little more, Really.
That means a hell of a lot more. I mean, that's why we have pictures of him around the shop here, and his old Converse Hodgman
wading shoes,
wading boots or hip waders. I have all my grandpa's shotguns. I have his rifle. I have all of his fishing gear. I have a beautiful fiberglass Fenwick 5-weight fly rod. I think I showed you that thing. It's like that caramel and copper in the aluminum tube. It looks like it's brand new. It's probably from the early 50s. And yeah, he's the one. He's the one who got me into it.
It's funny, I grew up, my grandpa died when my mom was like 8 years old. So I never met my grandpa.
Yeah.
And then I had a single mom.
Yeah, you weren't close with your dad's side of the family.
No,
yeah.
I haven't seen my dad's side of the family since I was maybe 6 years old.
Yeah.
It's probably the last time I saw my dad.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was interesting because a friend of our family, Dave, he was like one of the few guys in my life that was like an adult. He was like a guy who was a cool guy. Had lived in Japan and trained to be a judo black belt in Japan, ran a judo gym and was a...
Judo Dave.
Yeah, Dairy Dave, Dairy Judo Dave.
Cool guy Dave.
Yeah, he was a cool guy.
Yeah,
and he was like a biologist, so he was like a smart dude.
Dave sounds like a pretty interesting
cool cat,
fella.
Right? Like, and so like when you think about it, I was like, as a kid, I was like, dude, this is the coolest grown up I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Like, what a rad person.
Yeah.
And so same thing.
Yeah.
Anytime he'd show you something, he'd be like, hey, let me show you how to tie a knot. You'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, this guy's rad.
It's interesting how you bump up against those people who aren't your family or your immediate family, like your parents, along the way, that have an effect on you that you don't. They'd never. I bet you Dave never gave second thought to the effect that he had on you as a kid.
No.
Like he never sat in his chair one night and went, I bet you that Adam was impressed with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't even know. But you bump against it, you run up against these people in your journey on Earth, and they don't even know that you or that they've had any kind of impression on you.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because you do, you run into people like that who become sort of linchpins in who you become.
Yeah.
You know, like there are a handful of people in your life, probably outside your family, that you could look back at and go, oh, if I'd never met that person, my life would be totally different.
100%. But to that point, I bet you my grandpa never gave any thought to the effect that he had on me.
Yeah.
Because he saw me so rarely. I think I was the only, of all of his kids, he had 4 kids, and of all of his grandkids, which he had 6? 11? I think he had 11. I was the only child he was ever present for the birth of. Because he was at war. The rest, when all 4 of his kids were born.
Yeah.
He was either in Korea or World War II.
Yeah.
And he...
Hopefully it was just like right after he left, because if it was a long time, you might have questionable...
Yeah, we don't talk about that. It looked pretty different, but but you know, we never got to see him very often, and so like I don't know that he even really understood what kind of impression that he's had. And you know, the interesting thing is the impression that they have if they're a person of any magnitude, the impression that they have after they're gone, which is the most interesting thing. My grandfather and my wife's grandfather, the impression that those people have had on my kids is super interesting, because they're 2 generations removed.
Yeah.
You know, all they have is pictures and stories, and I'm sure the tales become taller over time. But
yeah.
You know, like my wife's grandfather was a super interesting dude, and isn't it interesting though? Not we're going down a rabbit hole here, but it's super interesting. People from that generation had so much like struggle and things that they had to go through between like everything, like the entire, like we have it so easy now.
Yeah.
Lazy fat pieces of shit we are. I mean, seriously.
I resemble that part.
I mean, seriously, in comparison to these like war era people.
Yeah.
My wife's grandmother's turning 90 here soon, and she's like the lady who washes out the plastic bags that the bread comes in and saves them to put other things in.
Yeah.
You know, like those Depression era people and war era people, they went through so much stuff.
Dude, I can remember my grandma, like who's passed away now, but she grew up during the Great Depression, you know, and like my kids will not probably ever know anyone that grew up in the Great Depression, obviously, especially the farther we go here, because it was 100 years ago now.
Yeah.
But my grandma grew up in the Great Depression. I can remember my grandma, the weird stuff that they hold on to, like washing those bags.
Yeah.
Or like my grandma, I remember she would eat bread with milk on it.
Milk bread.
Yeah. And I was like, that's the grossest. But it was something from the Depression that she learned. And she would just like put like a couple slices of bread in a bowl, pour milk on them, and eat. And she, during the Depression, dude, that was all they had. And she grew to comfort food, and it became milk bread, I guess.
Well, like my grandfather and my wife's grandfather, both of them sportsmen, they killed everything. Like there was no thought to, maybe I shouldn't kill that. Maybe I shouldn't catch 25 steelhead today and take them home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there was zero thought.
If it was legal, they gave
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we can assume we weren't there. But the when you go back and you look at pictures of their hunting and fishing adventures, you're just like, wow, that's a lot.
It brings up an interesting point. You ever talk to like
like we're limited to like 8 fish a day, right?
Yeah. You know? Sometimes it's closed because there ain't enough fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ever talk to old?
It's not that far, not that long ago.
I remember talking to an old timer once who was telling me that they grew up in, you know, out kind of close to the Santiam, And when they were kids, they used to line up on the creek and shoot salmon with their 22s that were in the shallow water. And then in the same conversation, explained to me, like, he was like, man, but there's just no fish anymore. And I was like, wait, well, hold on, dude. like
it's so weird. It's not funny.
It's crazy, right?
Crazy.
It's crazy. Like, oh yeah, we used to line up and shoot them when they were trying to make babies. And it's so weird. They just don't do that anymore.
Wow. That's exactly what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get down a whole rabbit hole with that one, but like pheasant populations in Northern California.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, they were everywhere. You had to be careful when you drove to school because you'd hit two or three of them. They're everywhere. Gone.
Dude, foxes. When I used to drive, this is when I was a guide and living here and driving to the coast all the time, in the stretch between like Newburgh and Grand Ronde, I'd see foxes constantly out in those fields.
Wow.
I haven't seen an alive fox in this valley in I don't know how long.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's weird, man. The old timers though, it was so, what a different time.
Yeah.
I just saw a video the other day, but not just when it comes to like hunting and fishing, just in general. I saw a video the other day pop up on Instagram or something talking about, this is like the early 80s. And there's this guy being interviewed and he's like, yeah, government wants to get into our lives. You know what? It's going to come to a point where you can't even stop at the bar on the way home after a long day of work and have a couple beers and drive home. This guy's sitting behind the wheel cracking a beer, and this lady's got her kid next to her. She's just like, the government trying to be in our lives. And I'm like, this is, wow. It was it was about drinking and driving.
Yeah,
but
they were mad because they couldn't crack a beer and drive around.
Exactly.
She had her like baby next to her in the car seat.
I know.
In the front seat.
I know. Probably smoking a heater the whole way.
Those were our parents, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I remember my dad, when he had his boat shop, would have a Marlboro Red dangling from his lips while he's dipping a carburetor from an outboard motor in carburetor cleaner, in a bucket of carburetor cleaner. And he's 6 inches away with a lit cigarette, you know.
You know, when that carburetor cleaner got dirty, he just put it down the drain, too.
100%.
100% back in the day.
And washed his hands in the carb. I remember as a little kid getting lower unit lube all over my hands because he was teaching me how to service a lower unit on the outboard. And I said, Dad, I got grease all over my hands. He goes, go over there and wash them in the carb cleaner bucket. Go lift the lid of like 5-gallon bucket of carb cleaner that had the tray in it that you put carburetor parts in. You just...
now you know why you have cancer.
I'm fine. Fine. It's a different time, man. Totally different time. You remember going into restaurants and people would ask you, would you like smoking or non-smoking?
Yeah.
Mr. Steak in Yuba City, California. We'd go in there and they had one side for smoking, one side for non-smoking, and the smoke didn't care. It just went everywhere.
It wasn't like there was a vent that cleaned it out.
No.
It just was.
They had like glass little partition above the booths. That was it.
I can remember not
the
even
guy
that,
next
right?
to you in the booth. There was a row of booths, non-smoking, smoking. And the guy right here on the other side of a 6-inch piece of glass was just smoking away. And you're...
Yeah, I can remember that. Dude, I remember my grandma, like, you know, again, she's dead now. Smoked her whole life.
Yeah.
Probably started when she was 3 or something. But driving us from California to her house in Tillamook, because she lived in Tillamook when we were little kids, and the whole way just smoking cigs.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the front of riding in a, dude, for a while, I remember even, she had this little Toyota pickup, like early 80s.
Yeah.
Toyota pickup. She just put a bunch of pillows in the back. We'd just ride in the back all the way from California.
Oh, yeah,
to
I fell out the
Tillamook,
back of my dad had a lifted 65 Ranchero. I fell out the back of that thing so many times when he was doing 30 coming down the hill. I can think of one time, leaning up against the tailgate, my brother is sitting up against the cab. I had this big puffy jacket on. We went up to chop wood. We were driving down this gravel road. The tailgate falls down because the latch was broke. And I flew out the back. Cobb didn't say a word. Just kept driving. My dad looked in the rearview mirror and saw me land in the road. I was probably 6. You used to just do so much crazy stuff.
Dude, it's a miracle we're all alive.
Oh my gosh. I remember when I was a little kid and my sister's husband chewed Copenhagen. Like, he always had a dip of Copenhagen in. Never was a big dipper. Like, he never had the huge wad. He always just had a little pinch right in the front. All day, every day, never spit. Always had it in, right? And I remember when I was a little kid, I thought that was so cool. He was the coolest dude. He was duck hunting and fishing all the time, and he always had this little tiny dip of Copenhagen in. You'd go out to eat, like we'd go to a Mexican food place in Yuba City, Casa Lupe, was where everybody went. And we'd be sitting around the table, all of us, and we'd all finish, and he'd go, just sit there and keep talking, and I just remember thinking, man,
Only you could be that cool.
only I was that was Clint Eastwood to me, man. He was the coolest dude I ever saw when I was a little kid, you know?
Yeah.
And it's probably why I took my first step when I was 13, you know? Cherry skull.
Ugh.
I can't even smell.
Oh my God.
I can't even smell cherry, like, cough syrup. Because
Now,
that's what that stuff
As a
smells like.
grown up, I would rather eat a snake's ass. That's the grossest thing I could imagine.
I still, anytime somebody opens a can of Copenhagen around me, I just, any chew, I instantly am like,
Besides cherry skull.
besides cherry skull, because
Yeah.
I puked it up. But there was blackberry brandy mixed in with that cherry skull. We were trying to be grown-ups
Yeah.
by drinking
Well played, sir.
blackberry brandy.
Well played, sir.
We were hobo drunk.
Oh.
All right. Well, spring fishing's coming up. You guys are going to the Sportsman Show here in Portland. Go stop in, see Fisherman's Marine. They're going to have a whole spread of steelhead gear you can check out. Probably some stuff you haven't seen in a while or seen at all. And then after the show or before, swing into the shop here. We got some crazy deals going on. We're not that far from the expo center.
And lots of new stuff coming, too.
Lots of new stuff coming. We got the new t-shirts. We're going to be dropping new stuff consecutively here for a while until the summer launch happens. So come and check that stuff out and get out there and do some fishing.
Or at least reminisce on the boat.
Or at least reminisce on the boat and chew some cherry skull and peek your guts out. See you later.